Hi everybody, I'm William from SSW. I'm at NDC Sydney and I'm here with Will Velida, lead engineer for Mantel Group. And we've been talking about Radius. And I would love, Will, if you can really explain to us, what is Radius?
So at a very high level, Radius is a cloud-native platform that brings developers and operators together to basically build and operate cloud-native applications. Now, building and running applications, particularly microservices, as you know, through your experience, is quite challenging. It's not easy. There's a whole bunch of problems that we can encounter. So architectures can be very complex, all these services all over the place, how do we communicate, etc. Cross-platform portability as well. So we might not be deploying to a single cloud. We might have to deploy to multiple clouds for active disaster recovery reasons.
That's becoming more and more popular now.
Yes, particularly.
Yeah.
And enforcing best practices as well. So in organizations where security is at top of mind, as it should be for all organizations, but some are a little bit more stricter than others, they want to make sure that cloud developers are actually implementing best practices and in a way that's consistent across all teams within an organization. And then troubleshooting. There is nothing more fun than troubleshooting distributed architectures.
That's probably one of the hardest ones in all of this, right?
So trying to actually provide a platform, create a platform that makes that very straightforward for developers is a bit of a challenge in itself. Now, Kubernetes has been somewhat successful for enterprises running distributed architectures. I know Kubernetes is, you can't solve all your problems with Kubernetes, despite what they told us. They were lying to us. But cloud-native applications are much more than Kubernetes. It is the container registries that we're using to pull down containers from. It's state stores that we're using. We can't just have pods stay up and then crash and all our data is lost. So in order to kind of make applications more sophisticated and help developers and operators build cloud-native applications in a straightforward way, Radius comes into the picture. Now, it's not the authentication system.
It's Radius Auth,
not Radius Auth. It's the same team so it's the Microsoft Incubations team, the same team that worked on Dapper.
Great, yes.
So they've now come up with Radius. So it's essentially a cloud-native platform that's designed to work on any cloud, so Azure, AWS, GCP.
Right.
And the intention is to kind of help enable that collaboration between developers and operators to build cloud-native applications.
So is Radius part of the CNCF, Cloud Native Computing Foundation?
It's currently in Sandbox, so it has been submitted for Sandbox.
Right.
It's very early stages, particularly in the lifecycle of Radius itself, but because they've had that experience with Dapper, they want to get the ball rolling and use their experience to kind of bring this to the Cloud-Native Platform, Computing Foundation, to actually graduate it.
So right now it's really just try it out stages. Don't build something real.
In the docs it says do not write. It is not production ready. This is all very experimental and this is cool. The abstractions are there, and we could actually build something with this. So today it's just kind of raising awareness of, hey, there's this cool emerging platform that's coming.
It's coming. Cool.
It's coming. So let's give it a try. So I talked a little bit about team collaboration. Now, the core thing that we're going to really talk about today is this idea of infrastructure recipes. So as a platform engineer, as a developer, I'll start from a developer's perspective first. I could have an idea of my application. I might need a database. I might need a cache. I might need a gateway. And what infrastructure recipes are, they're essentially abstractions of the underlying infrastructure. So as platform engineers, I might think, okay, for a cache, we'll use Azure Redis Cache, but we need to integrate that into a VNet, so we need a private endpoint. That might be only available at a certain SKU. We want to do some diagnostic logging on that. We want to enforce some tags for that particular resource. So as a platform engineer, I'll kind of make that up into an infrastructure recipe. So when developers use it, all they're really concerned about is they're calling a cache. The responsibility of them having to configure it to conform to our organizational policies or for their application is taken they're alleviated from that. And the platform engineers have made that available to them as an abstraction via recipes.
So that really sounds very similar to the abstractions from Dapper, right? So it's just you can send about your code and you're talking about a pub sub or a state management or state store. You're talking very much the same thing, but it seems like a higher level again, right?
Pretty much. So from a Dapper perspective, we could say, okay, this is a state store component that we like to call. We can configure what that state store is. So it can be a Cosmos DB, it can be Azure Storage account. Here it's a little higher than that. So as a developer, all I'm really concerned about is, okay, that's a database that exists somewhere. And then platform engineers will have that underlying understanding of what that recipe is. So they'll have it at a specific SKU, some diagnostic logging, however they want to configure it. And developers just essentially call it like a resource.
Excellent. Okay, that sounds pretty cool. Yeah.
There's also this idea of an application graph. So what Radius does is once you've initialized a Radius environment and you've got a Radius application running there, it has this concept of an application graph. So we can see kind of what dependencies exist in our application, whether it's just a container that's speaking to a gateway or exposing a gateway. It's also got a data store, a Redis cache. So Radius has that ability to kind of show what that application is in a graph form.
Great.
And it's also cloud neutral as well. So even though it's a Microsoft Incubations kind of project, you can run it on AWS. Azure obviously being another option as well. And GCP, not at the moment. So at time of recording, GCP is kind of not supported. But the intention is that no matter where you're deploying your cloud native applications, you can essentially build Radius applications.
So you're saying you can run it in the blue cloud or the orange cloud?
Yep.
What does it mean by running Radius? Like, is it a runtime like Dapper, or is it something totally different to that?
So it's essentially, runtime's not the best, so more of like an environment.
Okay.
So when you initialize a Radius environment, it's essentially saying, okay, this environment is going to act as like a landing zone for all of our Radius applications to be deployed to. And that environment will bind to whatever compute platform you're running on. So at the moment, it's just Kubernetes. So essentially your environment binds to the compute platform that is Kubernetes.
Oh, okay, cool. I think you've got some demos coming, right?
I think I do. So yeah, just touching a little bit on what I said earlier. So you can imagine your cloud native applications being made of SQL servers, MongoDB, whatever. Essentially, Radius kind of exposes that through infrastructure recipes designed to run on any cloud or edge infrastructure.
Yeah. Oh, this is pretty cool.
So jumping into kind of our demo. So as an application developer, I might have a application that consists of a front-end container, talks to a back-end container, let's say an API, which kind of interacts with there might be some a SQL database. There's also a cache in there. So as a developer, all I really say is, okay, I've got a container, I've got a cache, I've got a database. And then those recipes can say, okay, this cache is actually an Azure Redis cache. This database is Azure SQL DB, and it's all running on Kubernetes.
So in some way, can I mix and match the resources for my app between two clouds at the same time?
Yes, you can.
Cool.
So within the resource, there's just like a property where you say provider, and you can point it to Azure or AWS.
Okay, interesting.
Radius also does come with local recipes as well out of the box, which is what I'm going to show in the demo.
To run on your local...
Yeah, so it's all like locally running. Even though the platform is on Kubernetes, they're essentially local to the pod. So they create pods.
Okay, looking forward to that.
Cluster.
Yeah, that's going to look cool.
So let's actually jump into it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into Visual Studio Code. Now I'm running the Insiders version. I might actually come in a little bit here. And the reason why that is, there's an extension that you can use with Radius called Radius Bicep. Let me just hide my terminal there. And this is a temporary fork of the official Bicep repository to support Radius while they're kind of figuring out how that's going to fit into the main Bicep repository. So they've essentially just forked it to support all the resources.
So just before on your slides, I saw Bicep and Terraform. But this is just a Radius Bicep, so there's a complementary Terraform version as well?
Yeah, so there are going to be Terraform providers. They're still under construction, so again, very early days. Probably beginning a Microsoft thing. Bicep is getting a lot of love at the moment, so that's essentially what they're running with, but Terraform support is coming. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go back into that terminal, and I'm going to make a new directory. I'm just going to call it demo application. I'll CD into that. And the first thing I'm going to do, get some real estate going, is I'm going to initialize my environment. And that Radius environment, I'm going to set up a new application in that current directory. You can add Radius to existing applications as well. So if you've got applications running on Kubernetes, you can add annotations to say this is Radius enabled. But what we're doing here is just going to create a new Radius application with a new environment. That's running on an AKS cluster that I've got running in Azure. So that's in Kubernetes.
Right, so you're AKS in the cloud, but you've got local context here, and Radius is interacting with that cluster. Excellent.
Yeah, pretty much. So what that's done, if I go into that demo app application now, it's kind of scaffolded a bicep file. So what I've got here is just a simple container that's going to be exposed on port 3000.
Right.
So because I can't remember the RAD commands off the top of my head.
Oh yeah, that's right. Early days.
So
it'll be muscle memory soon.
Hopefully. So what I can do actually, if I actually show, I'll change that to the name of my application. So demo app, I can actually see run demo app. That would be useful.
Right,
Cool.
yeah.
So this gives me kind of like a JSON output of what my application is. Now, this ID here, so the Radius API kind of works in a hub spoke architecture. That's the kind of like a unique identifying ID. So it can actually see, so Radius can talk to that application, see what it is and how it build out that graph that I was talking about earlier.
Excellent. Yeah.
Location is deceivingly set to global at the moment. That's a mysterious design choice.
Right.
But I've got my AKS cluster running in Australia East. The location of the application is in relation to that global meaning is in relation to where your cluster is running. So that's in Australia East. And at the moment, so this environment here is saying that it's a default environment there. That's the name of my environment. And when my application is deployed, it's going to bind to that environment.
So we'll just play to the standard sort of, dev, staging,
Yes.
production type of environment. That's what it's for, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So you could spin up a dev environment, a staging environment, and actually bind recipes to that environment.
Excellent.
So if you're thinking of, I just want like a nice little demo environment and want to provision bare bones material on it, you can provide recipes that enable your developers to do that.
Cool.
So yeah, compute is defaulted to just Kubernetes at the moment. When I was working for Microsoft, it was purely Azure Container Apps. A little bit of trivia there.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But now that we've actually kind of seen what our application looks like, I want to go ahead and deploy it. So
while you're doing that, the compute now is Kubernetes. It could be ACA again. It could be in AWS like an ECS cluster or something else. Like it's just vanilla Kubernetes, I guess.
Yeah. So
it could be all sorts of things later on when it gets done. Okay.
Yeah. So at the moment, that's just going to deploy a simple container that I've got.
Yeah.
And now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to run that as well. So once that's deployed, it's built my bicep file, it's deployed, we should see a log stream coming through. Mm-hmm. And we'll see a nice little template website that the Radius team have provided.
Okay, awesome. I like the name of the CLI, RAD.
RAD,
yeah.
There's a RAD time. Yeah. So that's now being forwarded to localhost 3000. So if I just go into that there. There it
works
is.
straight away.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I've got my Radius application. Now, what this kind of base image does, it kind of shows what's actually connected to our Radius application.
Right, yeah.
It also provides some metadata about our container as well, so network configuration, some process information, environment variables, and there's also kind of like a to-do list here.
Right.
So
that's a Radius demo app. So it's from the Radius team, just sort of showing the sort of functionality of Radius. And then here's another sample little app.
It's very base observability. So we were talking a little bit earlier before this about how we could actually observe our Radius applications.
All right, yes.
There is a Grafana dashboard that the Radius team have provided. They're also working on a Radius-specific dashboard. So it's a little bit like Aspire and also a Dapper dashboard as well.
Yeah, okay, cool. Everyone wants the same thing here, right? There's a bit of a race going on now.
Yeah, pretty much. But since something's configured, so what I'm going to do a little bit, I hope you guys do not mind, but a little bit of copy and pasting.
Oh, yeah, no, that's cool. I do it all the time.
Just do that, and I'll essentially show you how this all fits together. So what I've done here, so I've got my demo container from before,
right, yeah.
But what I've defined now is a backend container, so we can think about that as maybe an API that our front end is going to talk to.
Yep.
That's going to be exposed on port 80. I've also created a MongoDB database as well. So the to-do list was just being stored in memory. Mm-hmm. In production applications, we don't want to do that. So we want an actual database to store our items in.
So you're referencing your application from above into this database. You're sort of giving up the relationship.
So when I'm deploying that, it's saying, okay, this resource belongs to that particular application within that environment. and I've also got a gateway as well. So when we exposed our container earlier, we were connecting directly to that container, whereas in production, we'd like a gateway that we can actually hit, and we've done that there.
Gotcha. So this builds up that application graph, really, like those relationships between different things. That's really all, a lot of what is in this radius file.
Yes.
Okay, or the radius bicep file.
Bicep file, yeah.
All right.
And then just to connect, so if you look at those connections, that connections property there, I've connected that to my front-end container. So I'm saying
I see.
the Mongo database is going to be connected there. It's also going to connect to that back-end container there. So if I go back into my terminal, so now I'll just...
Oh, it's running right now.
It's running right now. I forgot to... But I'll run that again. So that's going to build my new bicep file. And as in the deployment, what you should see is all the dependent resources being provisioned at a time. So it's going to make sure that gateway is available.
I see.
It's going to build that backend container.
That's what it's doing now, right?
Yeah. So that application graph that I talked about earlier, it gets kind of executed within the deployment process. So it makes sure that any dependencies is kind of deployed before it kind of deploys my front-end container.
But pretty quick to get up and running with a lot of resources, all that complexity, good to go.
Yeah. When you're deploying stuff to cloud, so to Azure, to AWS, there is a bit more of a complex process involved.
But this is all local.
This is all local.
Okay. So that's nice and quick locally. But that's good. It's good for devs.
Yes, great for devs. So if I hit that gateway now, there's my application.
That's the same app?
Same app.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'll just zoom in a little bit. So now I can see my radius connections.
Yep.
So I've got my MongoDB database. I've also got my backend.
Yep.
So if I go to my to-do list, that warning's gone. When I add item, that's going to be persisted to MongoDB, which is hosted in there.
All right. So if you kill your Radius app, or if you halt the Radius CLI, this all goes away. But when you start it up again, the data's not lost, right? So you've persisted it. Okay, cool. Yeah, we want that.
Yeah. So if I was to deploy to Azure, for example, I would need to kind of create a service principal to authorize my Radius application the ability to actually go ahead and provision resources.
Yeah. So that's just like how we would normally do it with the Azure CLI, all that. Yeah. Okay. Cool. And AWS, I guess they do similar thing.
Yes.
Okay. So you set up some sort of permissions.
Yeah, I think it's IAM, and then you register it to your Radius environment, so that Radius environment has permissions to go ahead and create resources on your behalf.
Okay, cool.
Awesome. Just trying to think what else I can show you.
So I think you mentioned just before about the observability and the dashboards, and that Radius is working on something, right? So is that on? Can we see that yet?
Not yet. So there is a dashboard that's being worked on. I think it's currently on version something like 0.30. I think it's coming soon. They are working on it. So if I actually go into kind of the Radius project itself, the dashboard is there.
Oh, there it is.
Contribute to it. They are looking for contributors as well. They recently demoed this at one of their community calls, which is conveniently 4:00 in the morning for us Australians.
Oh yeah. Early risers.
Early risers,
We should try
headphones on at the gym. But yeah, the whole Radius project, it's still in its infancy, which I like. So yes, it's not ready for production yet, but it's very much the early stages of it. So
and the community around this,
it is growing.
Yeah.
So as all kind of good open source projects have, they've got their own Discord channel.
Oh, great. Okay. So we'll hop in there, right?
Lots of collaboration in there. I mentioned earlier that it's in Sandbox at the moment. So
and that's on CNCF.
That's on CNCF, and then obviously Radius project on GitHub, where all this kind of work is being done on the Radius engine itself. Recipes as well. So it's very few recipes at the moment. I think.
Okay. Yeah.
So
I guess there's a lot of plans in the future. Public recipe registers or something like that. How we have that for Bicep as well now. So they probably have a lot of these things for us just to take off the shelf and start using. Yeah, that would be pretty cool.
Yeah, so looking at that recipes there, that is pretty much not
community recipes.
Yeah, but there's some for AWS, Azure, also local development as well.
Okay, we should check this out. Yeah, this is pretty cool. And there's some contributors there. You did say something quite exciting before. There's a Grafana dashboard that they've done as well.
Yes,
right?
so
everyone likes the pretty.
If I actually, there it is. actually go into the docs as well, the team have actually worked on Grafana dashboards that you can
for radius sort of setups. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
So you don't have to wait around for the dashboard that comes out of the box. You can start observing your radius applications in Grafana.
Yeah, microservices and the amount of stuff I guess we get out of that is hard to deal with, but you can centralize on one of these cool dashboards, right? Yeah. Okay. Will, that's exciting, man. I guess we don't really know exactly what's coming, but it's pretty exciting, and it's going to hopefully just make life easier to spin up more, bigger, complicated microservices,
hopefully.
Right? All right. Yeah, cool. Thanks for the chat, man, and the demos here. It's great. So,
no worries. Thank you.
I'm William from SSW, signing off. See you next time.